Beautiful humans, welcome back. As you can see, we're inside today because Mother Nature is truly turning it on. It is currently a howling, probably west-southwest, I would say. I can't even tell you the surf report because it would be crazy out there. It is blowing its head off. And the rain's just started to come in. I really wanted to film this one outside, but that's okay. I'm inside today. I'm in my nice chair. I'm about to light some incense. And I have a beautiful cup of lemongrass and ginger tea. So before we get into it, let's get super comfortable. Grab yourself a cup of tea, coffee, whatever you're feeling. We're ready to go. Quick sip of tea. Wow. I'm really getting into tea. It's underrated or well rated. It's definitely not overrated. But I'm exploring the world of tea, and it's nice. It's actually a really nice thing to do when you wake up. My current routine is wake up, flick the kettle on, ginger tea, try and move the body a little bit, whether it's some lymphatic work, get outside, jump around, shake, maybe a little bit of a stretch. And yeah, a tea's a very nice thing to have whilst doing that. And I was having the conversation with someone yesterday about what's your favorite cup of tea? Not in terms of the flavor, but the location or the environment or the setting. And we both agreed that how nice is the cup of tea whilst reading a book? Two very simple things. You can do it anywhere, and they just seem to go hand in hand. But we're not here to talk about tea or books today, but we're here to talk about establishing a foundation. So in my other videos, and especially the most recent one, bringing awareness, it's almost like we're now moving into establishing a foundation. So we spoke into what it's like to bring awareness to something. How does this make me feel? And is it serving me for the now and for the future? And once you start to bring awareness to yourself, your health, your environment, your relationships, and everything in between, we can start to now build from that. And rather than trying to, I guess, choose a specific diet, specific protocol, training plan, biohack, supplement, I truly believe simply establishing a foundation is a great starting point. And we could argue that you could probably maintain what I'm about to speak about for the rest of your life. And once you establish this foundation, you then have the choice if you want to optimize and focus on maybe the extra 1% if you really want to get that much out of yourself, whatever that might look like. So, what do we think about when it comes to establishing a foundation? Look, not that I know much about how to build a house, but I'm pretty sure it starts with the foundation. And to build a solid structure and a solid framework for the house, you need the foundations. They're the very first things. And then once you have those foundations set, you can start to then, build the frame, slap the plaster on the wall, put the doors in, put the kitchen in, put the fancy things in, and then like right at the end, you can put, the sick looking artwork on the wall. And I'm a huge fan of the artwork. Like, you can't see my office right now, but I'm a huge fan of having cool looking shit like in my office, especially from op shops. Actually, this microphone, stick, handle, whatever you want to call it, is a Japanese fan. Cost me $1 at the op shop. It's fucking cool. So coming back to this, the sick looking artwork, a lot of people go straight to the artwork when it comes to their health. Straight to the fancy looking shit, the shit that looks sick on Instagram. But it never lasts long because they realize that taking the supplements or doing the biohacks when the foundation isn't there is just not going to move the needle at all. So establishing a foundation. So we need to build our foundation. And once we have that, honestly, we could probably stay there for the rest of our life. And then you may need to add a few more things in here, take a few things out. But let's speak about this foundation. And the way that I want you to think about it is the yin and the yang. So the yin is the nurturing force. So we're thinking nutrition, hydration, and sleep. The dynamic force is the yang, movement, thinking, breathing. This is going to be your foundation. So let's start with the yin principles, the nurturing force. Nutrition, hydration, and sleep. So, as I said in the last video, you've now brought awareness to your nutrition and how it's making you feel, your hydration and how it's making you feel, and you've probably brought awareness to your sleep environment and how you're sleeping and how that's making you feel. And so, these are the yin principles. So let's speak into nutrition. We could probably all agree nutrition feels and seems complicated and complex. Wow, I really got lost on words there. Complicated and complex. Why? Because we're most likely looking through the lens of social media. And again, like I've said, it's leaving you feeling confused because you're literally scrolling and one person saying, do keto, then the next person saying, do carnivore, do animal-based, go vegan, fasting, paleo, the list goes on. So it's always leaving people questioning, well, what is the right diet? Well, it doesn't exist. Because there are so many factors to take into consideration here. But what I can tell you about nutrition when it comes to establishing a foundation is, are you eating whole foods? Are they in season and organic? Are you connecting with your food and understanding where it's coming from? Are you chewing your food, being present with your food, and eating away from distractions? If you were to just do that, you will have an incredible foundation. You're choosing, I'd say 85 to 90% of the time you're choosing in-season, local, organic whole foods. So real food. You're connecting with where it's coming from, so you're understanding who's growing it. It's not covered in bullshit pesticides, glyphosate, fungicides, herbicides. And you're being really present with your food. You're cooking your food yourself. You're connecting with your food, and you're mindfully eating your food. You're chewing, you're slowing down, you're being present. That is an incredible foundation for nutrition. And then when it comes to like our protein, if you were seeking organic, biodynamic, grass-fed, grass-finished, local, wild-caught seafood, again, you now have an incredible foundation. Now, we can probably argue that there might be times on our health journey where we need to slightly change things up, add things in and take things out. You know, for example, if someone is dealing with negative gram bacteria, small intestinal bacteria overgrowth, candida, something like that, which we don't need to go into today. Yes, there is an argument that we might need to dial things even more. If someone has, intolerances to histamine-based foods, nightshades, things like that, then okay, we may need to change things up. But look, this is not me giving you nutrition advice. It's rather you're bringing awareness to where your food is coming from, what type of food you're eating, and how you're connecting with your food, and are you mindfully eating. This is such a great foundation. Because if we think about the majority of food now, we could probably all agree that that ain't food. Like when you walk into a conventional supermarket and you go into the fruit and veggie section, okay, that's whole food, but it's not organic, so we need to question that. Then we're going into the deli and the meat section, and, we're unsure where that's coming from. But that looks like the real food. And then, well, what are the rest of the aisles? Packages. That ain't food. That's genetically modified junk that is marketed in a way that you can't resist. But here's where it gets really cool. When you go to a local farmer's market and source your food and connect with your food, there ain't no distractions. No distractions. You don't have to walk down every aisle. You don't have to put random shit in your fucking trolley because it's not there. So there's no distraction. Can you think of the last time you were at the supermarket, which could have been today, could have been yesterday, whenever it was, and you just end up going down the aisles for the sake of it. And then you end up getting home and you just end up with random shit in your cupboard. Oh, it's there, I may as well eat it now. And then when you go to then create a meal for yourself, you've got no foundation, you've got no base because it's all crap. So that's point number one, nutrition. Keep it simple. Choose whole foods, organic where you can. Connect with your food. Connect with who's growing it, where it's coming from, and then be mindful about how you're eating it. That's my advice with nutrition. And it's just advice. So now we move on to hydration. So hydration, we probably think water. And yep, that's going to be the majority of hydration, water. Now, this is really important because we're anywhere between 70 to 90% water, somewhere in that realm. So hydration is extremely important. But yet the water coming out of our tap ain't water. It's a liquid that is full of shit. Traces of pharmaceutical drugs, chlorine, fluoride, and God knows what else is in there. And therefore, we've now lost the body, the life, the structure of the water. It now hasn't got balance with the minerals and the electrolytes that it's needed to be well structured and have that life force that water does have. And so if you're then drinking tap water, it's like, is it then hydrating us? So when we think about structured water, well, structured water would be water that's coming from nature, coming from springs, that has all the balance of the minerals that you need to be hydrated and for it, the water, to have life. Then that structured water, once it's inside of you, once it reacts with nature, i.e. the sun, then creates a separation between the positive and the negative, and then turns into a gel-like substance that carries information directly to cells. That is how incredible water is. But if we aren't drinking structured water, then once it's inside of you, it's like misinformation inside of us, essentially. We can't create that charge separation between the positive and the negative, and it won't turn into that gel-like substance and create information and move to your cells to give it that information and to hydrate us from within. So I'm not going to go into the details of why nutrition's important and why hydration's important, because it's probably another video, and we'll go deep into those in later videos to come. But just to let you know, if you didn't already, nutrition is incredibly important, and so is hydration. We'll dive deep into those later. So bringing awareness to our hydration, now we understand probably a little bit on why hydration is so important. And remember, it's the nurturing force. So we really need to make sure we're not only drinking enough water, but we're also drinking well-structured water. So you need to understand where your water is coming from. So you can go onto something like findaspring.com. You could source spring water. There's a few websites out there now that deliver spring water straight to your door. You could potentially get a water filter. So like a benchtop water filter, you could get a reverse osmosis under your sink water filter. I think most of us should be filtering our shower water so the water that's hitting your skin is clean. And as we could probably all agree, there are so many limits you can go to. Like, you could do reverse osmosis all throughout the house. You know, you could literally go to a local spring and source your own water. There are limits. Now, I think for most people, I think it's just starting with whatever you have available to you within your budget, within, I guess, your environment. So maybe just starting with a water jug that's filtering out the bad shit could be a really good start, and then moving to a benchtop water filter, and then eventually moving to a subscription where you're getting spring water delivered, to eventually getting reverse osmosis throughout the house. Now, here's something to remember though when it comes to hydration. So I was speaking about minerals before, so we're probably thinking potassium, magnesium, sodium are going to be, you know, the main ones. Now, if you look at like something beautiful like a 3-base mineral water, there's so many minerals in there because it's coming from, you know, deep under the ground, but they're our kind of our key ones. So if you were to get a water filter, for example, some water filters remove all the shit, and now all the shit's, I guess, gone, but essentially the water isn't alive now. It's not structured. It doesn't have body. It doesn't have life. It doesn't have minerals. This is reverse osmosis water. Great for removing all the shit, removes like 99.99% of the shit, but it doesn't put anything back in. So this is where using something like an electrolyte, maybe by Seeking Health, or, a Celtic sea salt, a pink Himalayan salt, if you're in Australia, the River Murray pink salt, and literally just putting a little sprinkle into your water, giving it a stir around, and now it becomes alive again. Now we have the balance of minerals back in our water. That's creating the structure. So once it goes in, and then once we step outside, feet on the earth, getting in the sun, again, we then charge separate that water, and that water has energy and information. So that's water. Extremely essential for, well, everything really. So the last part of the yin, the nurturing force, is sleep. So again, right now, sleep is at the forefront of health and how important sleep is. Like, it's literally our body's reset button, where we create autophagy, so the repair of cells, our mitochondria, the body's ability to rest and digest, all of our hormones are going to get the love and the nurturing they need when we get good quality sleep, as well as a trillion other benefits that comes with sleep. But it's essentially like this big autophagy reset, like a brand new day is starting, full of life and full of health if we have a great sleep. But the moment that we're on the back foot with sleep, all of those things I just mentioned start to, I guess, be on the back foot a little bit. So sleep. Look, most people are going to say you need anywhere between 7 to 9 hours, and I probably agree. 8 seems to be this like benchmark that we should be hitting most nights. Yet there's this she'll be right mentality when it comes to sleep. Sleep when you're dead. I work better off 5 hours, 6 hours, go, 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 go. Fucking warrior mindset. And that's good until it's not, right? So how do we actually get the best sleep? Well, the body works on a 24-hour circadian clock, which is from the sun, which arguably is the masculine energy, and the moon is the feminine energy, because the cycle of the moon works around 30 days, very much like a woman or the female menstrual cycle. But we really just want to be following nature and copying nature as much as possible. Now, good sleep is going to start with watching the sun when you first come up as best as you possibly can. So the first thing that we should be doing when we wake up is going outside no matter the conditions and exposing ourselves to natural light. This gives us a little spike in cortisol. We get a pretty big injection of red and infrared light, which is going to give you a big boost in serotonin, which will then convert to melatonin later on, which most of you may or may not have heard about, I guess, the over-the-counter prescription melatonin, which if you're taking that, which I highly wouldn't recommend, by the way, that's kind of like known as like the sleep drug. But essentially our body needs to be making it, and it's crucial. It must be making it. So again, if you're waking up and looking at your phone first thing of the morning, we get this huge injection of blue light. We get too much of a spike in cortisol. Serotonin will get completely shut off. Obviously, you're going to get a huge rise in dopamine, but then a crash. But then essentially we won't be creating the right mechanisms to allow melatonin to be released later on that evening. So morning, we wake up and we, again, looking at that early morning sunrise or simply just being outside. Now, if you're a shift worker, obviously this would change a little bit. If you're waking up and you, like me in Victoria, and it's, crazy weather at the moment, you're simply just trying to, get outside as best as you can, even though it's shitty weather, and exposing yourself to any natural light you can. But then the most important part then, once you've done that, is to protect melatonin like it's your firstborn child, and blocking all artificial light when the sun goes down of a nighttime. Because yes, blue light is important when it's balanced with the sun. So if you go out in the middle of the day, there's a little bit of blue light that will give you a nice little spike in cortisol. Hence, when you're outside, you probably feel like you can get shit done because you get that little boost in cortisol, and that's blue light. But too much blue light in isolation, especially when the sun's gone down, will give you a huge spike in cortisol again, and then it will shut off melatonin, which I spoke about. That morning infrared and red light will give you a natural increase in serotonin, which will then convert to melatonin later on that night. So the sun's gone down, and you're now blocking all light, down lights, lamps, if then not if they haven't been converted with red light bulbs, and you're trying to make your environment as dark as possible. This is sending all those signals to release melatonin. So then when you do go to bed, the body is then being flooded with melatonin, which is antioxidant, anti-cancer, literally anti-everything at this point. It's incredible hormone. And then you'll go into that nice, deep, restorative sleep. It's really important as well to have the same sleep and wake cycle as best as you possibly can. For example, you go to bed at 10, you wake up at 6. I actually sleep more in winter because it's more dark, I guess. So I'm going to bed at around 9:30 at the latest, and waking up at like 7. So I'm getting a nice big sleep, and then because it's actually not getting light until about 7, 7:15 these days here in Victoria. So that's kind of my sleep and wake cycle. But in summer, it'd be more like, 9:30, 10 o'clock, and waking up at around that 6:30, but still getting the 8 hours. So that's really important to set the same sleep and wake cycle, morning sun or any exposure to natural light first thing in the morning, blocking all artificial blue light of a nighttime, using things like salt lamps, candles, blue light blocking bulbs. We just got a heap actually, and creating a nice dark environment. So if you need to cook your food, like all good, just have those blue light blocking bulbs in. You can jump onto any website. You should be able to find them pretty easy. Or lighting candles or having salt lamps and things of that nature. The other thing you can potentially do as well is wearing blue light blockers of a nighttime. So the red lens blue light blockers, make sure you get good quality. That can really protect your eyes. If you, for example, are watching TV, I wouldn't recommend it, but I know that we all have to live and we're all human, and that's totally rad. So making sure you're in those blue light blockers as well. So we've covered the nurturing force. So nurturing, is more, energy receiving. So nutrition, hydration, sleep. So now we're moving on to the dynamic force, the yang, more about energy expanding or energy giving, energy releasing, is movement, thinking, and breathing. So again, I think movement is very similar to nutrition. Why? because there's hundreds and hundreds of ways to move your body. And over the last, well, since I've been in the industry, let's say 12 to 13 years, there has been so many trends and crazes of movement. You know, from the early days of like, Jenny Craig and, Weight Watchers, that was obviously nutrition, but there was movement attached to that as well. And then, kind of moving into like Zumba, then kind of moving into like spin classes, and then the bodybuilding scene kind of took over, which I mean is still quite big. And then I guess CrossFit came around those 2008 to 2018, 19. CrossFit was huge. F45, then Pilates. Now it's kind of like this hybrid of training. Running's huge right now. Yeah, it's all got its place. Like, it's all movement. But I guess we have to understand, like, how should we be moving our body? Well, the question should start with, how do you want to be moving your body in life? What do you want to be doing? For example, playing with your kids, grandkids, surfing, climbing mountains. Do you want to be playing some kind of sport for a long time? Is your thing cycling? Is your thing running? Is your thing triathlons? Or is it simply just to move through life well? Move through life with good function and very little limitations. The way I think about movement for me is like, well, I'm about to be a father. Like, I want to just simply make sure I'm fit, healthy, and strong. So for the next 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years, I can not only keep up with my son, but potentially continue to outperform him. Maybe. Like, that's the goal. So he's looking up to dad going, yeah, like, he's a go-getter. He's a trooper. And I've always been into training, but I guess I've never had this great of intention or purpose behind the why. And I always say, don't focus on getting better at the gym. Use the gym or whatever movement practice you're choosing to get better at life. What's the thing you want to be getting better at in life? So ask yourself that question, and then use movement as the vessel to expand your life and the quality that you're living. And, if it's like, I just want to simply get out of pain, but why though? Why do you want to get out of pain? Is it because you want to walk freely or you want to run? Whatever it might be, create the why. Then the movement actually becomes a little bit easier. So for me right now, my movement is simple. It's 4 days a week in my garage. I've got a set of dumbbells and I've got a functional bodybuilding, conditioning, strength and conditioning type program. Super simple. I'm in the gym for no longer than an hour. And then that type of movement is complementing me surfing. I'm never too sore to surf. If someone's like, do you want to go for a run? I can go for a run. If one of my clients are like, Zach, let's go for a hike, we're going for a hike, and there's no limitations. That's what movement means to me. So find what your passions are in life, your purpose, your mission, and what movement means to you, and then choose the thing that will allow you to do the thing on the outside world better. And if that's not even going into the gym, that's just simply practicing, your hobby more, like surfing more or hiking more, then just do more of that. That's your movement, and that's totally rad. So that's the first part of the Yang movement. Really important to bring awareness to, and really important to choose something that aligns with where you're at and where you want to go in life. Thinking and breathing. So up here, and the amount of thinking that we do can be a lot. And every single individual throughout the day, throughout the week, throughout the month, throughout the year are going to go through so many thought processes and patterns, and so many thoughts are coming in. And those thoughts can become your reality. Those thoughts can now be your identity, can all of a sudden turn into the story you're letting those thoughts turn into. And it can be a lot. And so when we think about thinking, we do a lot of thinking all the time. And then we start to question ourselves a lot. Oh, fuck, there's this thought coming in, and now it's starting to turn into a story. Now it's starting to turn into a belief. Now I have a lot of fear around these thoughts. Now, all of a sudden, these thoughts are now turning into an emotion, energy in motion. They're turning into an emotion. Oh, it's getting me feeling like this. I feel like this. I've got anxiety. I've got fear. I've got doubt. I have distrust. I have a lot of lack. But I want this and I want that. And it's like, whoa, thinking can kind of just be this thing that all of a sudden turns into like, shit, this is now how I'm living my life. And so I don't want to go too deep into thinking right now, because we're probably already doing enough of it. But I just want you to start to build a relationship with your thoughts, whether or not they're even your own or they're someone else's thoughts, whether or not you're even thinking your own thoughts, or you're listening to the news or social media, and then all of a sudden you're like, holy shit, this is what I now think about health, or this is what I now think about life. I think when it comes to thinking, if there's something that you're unsure about or unclear about, or there's a lot of thoughts coming in that are creating fears and anxieties and stresses and distrust, is removing yourself from the noise and getting yourself into nature and finding your peace, and starting to have a conversation with your thoughts, starting to bring awareness around your thoughts so they don't become too much. So that's thinking, and this is why you can probably say it uses up a lot of energy. Like, holy shit, it uses up a lot of energy. Just like movement and just like breathing, it uses a lot of energy. So now we move into breathing. And again, I'm not going to go too deep into it today, but let's think about breathing. Well, the first thing that you do when you enter this earth realm is take a breath. And then the last thing you do when you leave the earth realm is finish with a breath. And then unconsciously throughout your whole life, you're breathing. And then there's our conscious breath as well, being conscious of our breath. So if we were to do a breath work practice, I'm conscious. But then the rest of the time, it's unconscious breathing. You're not even thinking about it. It's just, it's a natural occurrence that's happening every single moment. But here's what I can tell you about breathing. People breathe too much. People are breathing too much from their mouth, which is then changing their posture, which is then changing their jaw structure, which is then not feeding the body with the nutrients that it needs. So you end up changing your posture. You end up in too much of a sympathetic dominant state, fight or flight. Your jaw changes structure, your posture changes, and you end up with very poor mechanics. Now, all we need to really do is start to bring awareness to our breath. Where are we breathing from? Our mouth or our nose? Now, when we start to bring awareness to breathing through our nose, the breath becomes a lot more nurturing, gentle, soft, and keeps us in a parasympathetic state for the majority of the day. But the cool thing about breathing, to get into a sympathetic dominant state and to create energy, so for example, you're about to do movement, boom, alive. But we don't want to be breathing like that throughout the whole day. So for the majority of our day, at work, whilst eating, especially sleeping, we want to be breathing through our nose. In through the belly, expanding through the diaphragm. And the more we can bring awareness to that, the more calm we'll be. The more we feed information through our body, the less pain we'll be in. And arguably, if you read something like James Nestor's breath, the longer that we'll live. The better our jaw will be, the better our posture will be, the better our organs will function. So breathing is really important. But again, I mean, I could sit here for hours and talk about breathing, but that's not the point of this video. So breathing is really important. Thinking is important. Movement is important. Sleep, hydration, nutrition, they're all important, and they're all a part of your foundation. Now, there's no mention of supplements or biohacks, IV drips. There's no mention of that. There's no mention of crazy holotropic breathwork experience or plant medicine journeys, or 6-hour darkness retreats. There's no mention of that. It's just all the basic human foundations of nutrition, hydration, sleep, yin, movement, thinking, breathing, yang. If we can balance all of these areas, and remember our last video, we bring awareness to these areas, and now we can actually start to create change. And again, I haven't gone into like what's the best diet, although my opinion is pretty strong. Hydration, sleep. We're just simply bringing awareness and slowly starting to make change to these areas, even doing your own research into these areas and figuring out what works best for you and what allows you to feel good and allow you to have the best human experience. We now have a beautiful foundation. Now, then we can argue, then once we have this foundation built, we can then go to the extra mile, the extra 1%. Maybe add in a few biohacks like a sauna and an ice bath, maybe some red light therapy for extra, skin benefits. Add in some supplements like, for example, you're throwing on a BPC 157, or, you're throwing in colostrum in winter to help protect the immune system, whatever it might be. But if we throw on a supplement at the start and our nutrition, hydration, sleep, movement, thinking, breathing isn't regulated, and we haven't built a foundation in these areas, those supplements ain't going to do shit. That biohack's going to do fuck all. And that's the honest truth. Hand on my heart. So let's start to bring awareness. Let's start to understand the yin and yang principles. Let's continue to build on our foundation. And then once you've built that foundation, you then almost have the green light if you need to do things to move the needle even more. i.e., put the sexy as fuck artwork up at your house. And I have got some cool artwork in my house. I do have a few supplements, but for a long time I've been working on establishing my foundation. And guess what? That's still 80 to 90% of what I believe health to be. And I still practice all of those things to this day. And I still have awareness around all of those things I just mentioned. And I add in a little supplement from time to time. I add a little biohack. Like yesterday, I went down to the beach and there's a sauna on the beach, and I did sauna, ocean, felt great. Did a little movement, did a little breath work, great. Like that's that extra 1%. From time to time, I'll order a few supplements to, give me that extra little boost. If I feel like that's what my body is calling, then I'll explore that realm. But for 85 to 90% of the time, it's the foundation that I'm making sure I'm continuing to build.